Look, I feel like I'm an independent producer. I license beats through BeatStars. I'm not signed to any major label at the moment. I was temporarily, but that was for a very specific project. So would that have meant that for that time period, I was not an independent producer? Right after I have my bronchitis episode. What's going down? It's DJ Payne 1. This is the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast powered by BeatStars, episode 61. 61 isn't really a milestone number, so Dame isn't wearing a party hat or anything this time. But next time, once we hit, I don't know, if 75 is a milestone, if 100 is obviously a milestone, we're going to have some sparklers. Dame's going to sing his favorite Boys to Men song, which is not Motown Philly, which is not Is So Hard, which is not, what are all the other great Boys to Men records that you've rejected from your top five?
I'm not sure. Let's get off Boys to Men before I get a bunch of Boys to Men jokes in the comments. But this week, I almost feel like I should make it a thing because I know last week I was wearing Trey the Truth merch. And this week I got Jaron Benton's new merch on, which is pretty dope. It's kind of a flip of his logo. So if anybody's watching and you guys have some cool merch and you want Payne to wear it or me to wear it in an episode, I'd be happy to. So we might as well support independent artists on a platform that educates independent artists. So hopefully you have dope merch though, because I've gotten a lot of merch that's pretty suspect and that I wouldn't want to wear. So make sure your merch is dope.
That's a great setup for the topic, because obviously merchandise is super important for an independent artist. Artists who end up signing to, the 360 deal, that's kind of one of the infamous components of a 360 deal, that you lose a portion of your, to what degree, I don't know, but you lose a portion of your merchandising, and you lose some control over that. So let's just jump right into this because this is a big topic. We had Chance the Rapper even pull up in the comments section on our Instagram post because there was such a heated and, stupid debate about whether or not he was truly independent. But just in a general sense, the more I talk to you about this, just, offline, the more confused I got and the more convoluted this whole independent versus major versus DIY versus signed conversation became. So, I mean, I feel like I'm an independent producer. I license beats through BeatStars. I'm not signed to any major label at the moment. I was temporarily, but that was for a very specific project. So would that have meant that for that time period, I was not an independent producer? I don't know. I don't have a major publishing deal. So, that's another, in my mind at least, another box checked in the independent category. But I guess starting at the beginning, figuring out what independent really means and answering the question of what is an independent artist. I did some Googling last night and I'm like, man, this podcast is going to be crazy because I saw online that the definition of an independent artist was somebody who was unsigned, a recording artist who was unsigned. And then you went on the MEC Facebook community and asked what people thought an independent artist was. And the couple comments that I saw early on were just from people saying an independent artist is anyone who is self-sustaining and invests in themselves and doesn't get outside money. Is that fair to say?
Is that a right answer or is that what we saw in the Facebook group?
At this point, I don't know what the right answer is. I'm deferring to you because you know everything.
No, well, I believe, an independent artist can mean a whole lot of things, right? Like it can be on one side of the spectrum, the do-it-yourself. So to me, do-it-yourself is not separate from independent. It's a subsection of. So if an artist is just in their room making music, doing everything themselves, that's what some people refer to as a do-it-yourself artist. That is also an independent artist, right? But even if you're signed to, let's say, Strange Music or formerly Funk Volume, and our contracts look similar to a major, that's just you get a lot more of the money, right? Because we still own the masters, we still invest in the artist and put a bunch of money up front. But if you're signed to an independent label, I would consider that artist independent as well.
Yeah. Oh, master ownership. That's another thing because sorry to cut you off, but a lot of people would say, well, in order to be truly independent, you have to own your masters, which means a lot of people with independent label deals aren't independent, and some people with major label deals are considered independent, like a Nipsey Hussle situation.
So I would say but I think that artist, if an independent, but I would that's why it gets confusing. I would think if you're an independent
Very.
artist signed to an independent label, you're independent. The only major label artists, I believe, are artists that have deals with major labels, and it doesn't even have to do necessarily, because some people do have more profit sharing deals. But if you have that big system, because it will get even more confusing, because we had a distribution deal with Warner, but we were still independent because it was only a distribution deal. They only got 17% of our sales. We didn't have access to the full suite and priority of like people that were actually signed to Warner and were giving up their masters and only got a small percentage. Because so we didn't have the whole label rally around the label at that time because we had a distribution deal. We only give them 17%. So we retained ownership of the music. We retained, our independence in terms of when we can put out music. They didn't weigh in and say, okay, you guys got to hold off now because we got these projects coming out. There's none of that. We have full control. So I think having full control over when you release music, how you release music, so to me, I would say else is independent unless you are signed to a major record label that's not a distribution deal.
Yeah. So I think we probably agree more than we disagree. My whole understanding of being an independent artist, because I would always hear when I was a kid, I would hear about independent artists, right? And at that point, this wasn't the era of Spotify. This wasn't the era of, BeatStars distribution where anybody can, for very, very low cost, put their music on every, main music platform. So when I would hear artists talking about independence and being independent, it was artists that were maybe signed to a label like Raucous Records, or maybe they created their own LLC and that was their label. So either way, there was some kind of label involved, but they were independent labels. So to put things into perspective, this is what I found online about major labels. First, I think we need to define what a major label is, because a lot of people don't even make a distinction between a major label and a big independent. And I want to talk about that too. But the AIM, which is the Association of Independent Music, defines a major as a multinational company which, together with the companies in its group, has more than 5% of the world market for the sale of records or music videos. And as of 2012, there are only 3 labels that can be referred to as major labels. Those are Universal Music Group, Sony Music Entertainment, and Warner Music Group. Now, some people might be watching and saying, what about Atlantic Records and what about Def Jam? Well, Def Jam falls under the Universal Music Group umbrella. Columbia falls under the Sony Music Entertainment umbrella. Atlantic falls under the Warner Music Group umbrella. So those are still major labels. But there are only 3 major labels, which really is crazy to think about. 3 major labels control the majority of the sales of music. And to really drive that point home, Universal Music Group, which is the biggest label, on the planet has a 40% market share of new music in the United States. 40%. That's a hell. They own 40% of new music in the US. And on top of that, they're worth 50 billion, not million, billion, $50 billion. So you might look at a label that's independent but big and say, they seem major to me. They don't own 40% of all new music. They have a much smaller roster, and they're damn sure not worth 50 billion. They might be worth 50 million, but there's a big difference between 50 billion and 50 million. So does that mean, and I'm thinking this as I'm looking this up, does that mean any artist that isn't signed to one of these three labels, does that mean they're independent? I personally tried to stop using the word independent as just this broad label that could define an artist who just released their first song yesterday and got one play, and someone who's signed to like Empire and just went platinum the other day. You know, there's a big difference between those two people. So I think the spectrum of that is too broad. So I'm starting to call the really do-it-yourself artists just DIY, and I'm calling the people that actually have formalized deals with larger labels that are independent. I'm just calling them independent. But then the other problem is people use the word independent to describe a culture or a sound. So someone might say, well, Russ is independent. Well, no, he's signed to Columbia, which is under the Sony Music Entertainment umbrella. But that you just associate that culture of independence with him so much that suddenly the lines get blurred, even though they shouldn't. And then the other thing too that really screws the conversation up is that some independent labels are huge, and I didn't realize that. We talked about this on the podcast. We revealed how ignorant I was several episodes ago, because I didn't know that Taylor Swift was signed to an independent label. I mean, Taylor Swift, one of the biggest artists, period, and she's independent, and she's not now, but she was, before she had that whole Scooter Braun fallout. Strange music,
but her even that independent company had a. She wasn't in. I mean, she was signed to an independent label, but that independent label had a major label relationship, because you can't get as big as Taylor without that.
Yeah, they had a relationship, but you might be able to say the same thing about somebody like Macklemore too. Was Macklemore independent? Because he had the WMG situation, right? Where he was independent. He was releasing under his own LLC, but he had the resources, at least to some extent, of Warner Music Group.
Right. No, for sure. And I can't speak. I don't ever want to speak, in detail about somebody's deal that I don't know. But it's just interesting, and I don't know what happened to him after that big run. But if that relationship got severed, then you saw the power of a major record label, right? Like, I mean, unless it was personal, unless his music fell off or whatever, like you saw the power of, and even just your market share that you pointed out, having 40%, only 40% of the music landscape essentially is like, that is power, like it goes to, because some people will still say, oh, you can just do this independently. Well, it just depends on what your goals are, and I'm not saying that you can't reach Chance level success as an independent artist, but his route is extremely rare. And the back and forth that we had with the young man that was in our Instagram post was ridiculous, because he even brought in he basically was saying because Chance was signed to a certain booking agent that he got wrong. Like he said that Chance, and that's what Chance chimed in. And he said Chance was signed to WME. William Moore.
Well, let's start from the beginning, because this is a interesting saga. Now we're into the whole internet trolling, Chance the Rapper gets involved scenario that people probably want to hear about.
Right.
So what? And I don't even. So I think it started because you posted a clip from one of the podcasts on our Instagram where you were talking about independence and why there aren't, and this is always a stance you've taken. You know, a lot of people glorify being an independent artist. And your question is, if it's such an easy route to take, why are there so few major? See, I'm already messing this up.
Like
Why are
mainstream independent artists.
mainstream independent? Why are there so few mainstream independent artists? Why is there only one Chance the Rapper? Why is there only one Taylor Swift? Why aren't there hundreds of these?
Because it's important to get into the details of the things that we talk about, you know, and just that we parrot. And it's like, oh, we don't need a record label. Oh, we don't, you know, just do it independent. Like that's easy to say, and everybody's going to start repeating it. But in practice, depending on where you want to go, you know, if you just want to make a living and be kind of a middle class artist, like independence is a much more real thing, right? But if you're going to achieve Drake level success, Chris Brown level success, you know, going independent and doing that is going to be extremely rare. So because when we talk about like, hey, just do it independent, like you devalue what a label does and you never learn what a label does because you're just keep saying, oh, I'm just going to do it independent, you know? So that's the same line of thinking of like, oh, a record label is just a bank, you know, an advance is just a loan. It's like when you don't dive into the details, you never really fully understand what's going on and you continue to say stupid things. So that's what the post was. Initially, it was just like, it was the highlight from a previous podcast that pointed out like, yes, independent is a very real thing, but it's extremely difficult, and it's evidenced by Chance the Rapper being like the only, I would say at this point, he's the only like successful, like mainstream independent artist, right? There might be independent artists now that already went through the major label like ringer, right? And like and like they got, and now they're independent. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about an artist that was independent from the jump and never signed. Chance the Rapper, to my knowledge, is the only mainstream independent artist. Would you say that, Payne?
Well, now we have to argue what mainstream means, because you know, Tech
I
Nine.
mean, cover of like mainstream publications, on Ellen, on, you know, radio. Like who else is doing stuff like that? Who else is on all these shows and on cover of magazines, the cover of Parent magazine? Like who else?
Sure.
Who else is doing that?
So he's okay. Chance the Rapper is big, even by major label artist standards.
Right.
So
And
let's
am I
just say
missing
that.
somebody? I mean,
Well, you know, because if all you're saying is, a lot of people will say, well, you can't have a hit single without being major, but then you have Tech Nine, he has a hit single. Young Dolph has had hit singles. You know what I'm saying? But Young Dolph is not going to be on the cover of Parent magazine or whatever. He's probably not going to. Young Dolph, I can't see him dancing with Ellen. I can't necessarily see Tech Nine on. Yeah, I could actually. I just don't think he's gotten those opportunities so far. That Chance has. So yeah, I agree that Chance probably, as far as hip hop goes, is the one who's reached the level of success that's transcended music and has kind of turned him into an all-around celebrity as an independent artist.
So if he's the only artist that has reached this level of success, you know, publicly in the mainstream, then why do we keep just saying, you know, like a record label, just the same stuff? But anyway, somebody else came in and said that Chance, what? Because I was arguing that Chance is independent. He can release music whenever he wants. He's not, obviously he's at a level where he's doing deals with like Apple and stuff like that. And you might say that he's not independent because he can do that, but he just he's moving like an independent. He just has better relationships with more powerful people. Like he owns his masters. He releases music when he wants. He partners with whoever he wants. He's not tied into anything. Like he's like the extreme opposite end of the independent spectrum, right? Versus the do-it-yourself artist. But somebody else came in and said because he has a booking agent relationship that he got wrong, and that's why Chance chimed in. So Chance, this person said that he was signed to WME, working with Kara Lewis, working with UTA. It's like you can't work with all of those at the same time. It's like Kara Lewis left. I think she was with CAA and she left and she did her own thing. But Kara Lewis is a very powerful booking agent. But a booking agent definitely doesn't determine unless you're signed to, no, even, I mean, a booking agent doesn't determine your independence. Like they book you shows and sometimes they do, like they could connect you with brands and stuff like that. These big agencies, have different departments, right? Like they definitely do your touring, but they could, maybe get you some acting stuff, depending on what you want to do and the departments they have. Like, and then Kara Lewis played a huge role in Chance's success for sure. She's extremely powerful. It's the same person that Russ worked with, and I think Eminem, and maybe she worked with Kanye. Like that's definitely played a huge role in Chance's success, but it has nothing to do with his independence. So this person chiming in,
that'd be like saying Wendy Day is a major label when she's just a very smart, influential woman.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that has nothing to do with like anybody's independence. So it was a stupid conversation. And Chance jumped in and had to correct him. And even when Chance said, "Hey, I've never signed with WME. I'm not with WME," the person came back and refused to believe him and continued to claim that he was right. And
that's my favorite part.
And it's just a very sad time for the internet. Like we have to get to a point where if you say something and you're wrong, you say my bad. Like
never.
That's all you have to do. All you have to do is say my bad and just keep it moving. Like if you are wrong about something, like I don't understand why that is so difficult, but it seems to be the hardest thing for people to do on the internet.
It's impossible. So this happened to me yesterday. I had somebody DM me and at like late at night, and then early in the morning they DM me again. And the message I got late at night was "Let's collab," and the message I got early in the morning, and I didn't check because I get hundreds of DMs. The message I got early in the morning was, "This is the last time I'm going to ask you. Don't try to contact me once it's too late." So basically, letting me know that if I don't work with him for free now, I'm going to miss my shot. And this is someone I don't know who, whatever. I'm not going to clown the person for not being famous, but I shared that. I didn't give the person's name or anything. I shared it on Twitter and just said, like, look, this is not how you build relationships. You don't try to flex your ego and try to intimidate people with the prospect of your future success in order to get them to work with you. And some dude commented, well, he was totally justified. That's what happens when you flex your ego on him first. I'm like, how did I flex my ego on him? Because you didn't get back to him right away. I'm like, it was a 10-hour window from like 11 p.m. until 8 a.m. I get hundreds of DMs. If I don't reply to this person's DM, that's me being an asshole. And his reply was, and you're going to love this, because it goes back to the whole principle of never on the internet can you admit that you're wrong, even though you're obviously wrong. He said, what did he say? He said, I was wrong based on the time frame, but I stand by what I said had the time frame been longer. So I'm like, I got to use that in conversation. Like if I step on somebody's shoe and they say, "Oh, you stepped on my shoe," I'll be like, "I'm sorry if I stepped on your shoe, but if I hadn't stepped on my shoe, you need to get out of my face because I'm not wrong." It doesn't make any sense, but that's the internet. That's what I mean. So that was my favorite part about the whole conversation, because you would think, here's somebody saying Chance the Rapper is signed to WME. He's telling you that. He's saying, Dame, you don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about, Dame. You have no idea how this stuff works. You don't know if Chance is signed to WME. I'm telling you, Chance is signed to WME. Who shows up? Chance the Rapper. What does Chance the Rapper say? I am not signed to WME. And what is the dude saying? Reply to Chance the Rapper. Yes, you are.
Right.
It's the greatest. That's the internet right there in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think, just to get things right, I think WME is now called Endeavor. But I mean that's besides the point. But I just, for people that are watching, if you're wrong, we're all gonna be wrong sometimes on the internet. If I say anything wrong, like factually wrong, in a podcast, and it's revealed to me in a future podcast, I will apologize to you and tell you the right answer. Like if I, because I've been going in on United Masters because I really think that they're really not doing anything like new, but they keep putting out these press releases like what they're doing is next level. I just don't like, in the music industry, I don't like when a big name can do something that independent artists have been doing for decades, and then they do it, and then it's like a big ass deal. And it's just like a slap in the face to like artists that have been doing this shit for a long ass time. And that's a lot of what United Masters keeps doing. Like, with their distribution, their select service, it's like, that is nothing new, but I keep seeing, and I get it, you got to promote your service, but I just keep seeing like people praise them, and then it's always people that don't really know much about the music industry, and it's like, oh wow, they're doing that now. They can keep all their royalties for only $5 a month. And it's like, well, BeatStars has it for $2 a month. The
Yeah,
same,
this is a good time to plug that.
the same.
Beatstars.world.
The same thing. There have been distribution services that have been doing the same before them. Like they switched their model because their model failed. Like there's I mean, they may tell you that, but they switched their model because it failed. And I just hate, because it always happens. It's because the big names have, the ability to move press and to call in favors, and it just like confuses people, and the people that aren't in the music industry, when they see these big headlines, they're like, oh wow, this is amazing, this is something new. It's like, no, it's not. Like, and even with this new TikTok partnership, like I've been reading and I just don't know what the big deal is. Like, I think cool for them, they have a relationship with TikTok, but it's nothing. I don't see any additional promotion that you're guaranteed if you release your music through TikTok now. The only thing I see now is that a bunch of people that have never made music before are going to see a music distribution option on TikTok. They're going to release their first songs through there, and it's going to be some terrible ass music. So we're just going to get a flood of terrible music, and that's what this partnership has opened up the floodgates for. Unless somebody comes back, and this could be one of those points where something happens and be like, damn, you were wrong. It actually is a great thing. Like, I want to know what's the difference between release, because your music, that if you upload your music on BeatStars and it's going to go to TikTok, it's going to go to Instagram, it's going to go to the same places. What additional exposure are you getting through this TikTok partnership? If I'm wrong, I will tell you I'm wrong in a future episode, but I just don't get all the hoopla.
I'm noticing, has it become easier for people to just record a song on their phone and distribute it instantly? I've been noticing a lot of that has been happening, where I've been seeing stuff on the platforms that was clearly not recorded or mixed well at all, if
I'm
at
sure.
all.
I'm sure there's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot more ways to just record stuff, and I think we're gonna see more of that. That might even be a feature that United Masters adds, because it's quote unquote a record label in your pocket. Like,
Yeah.
these little cool little catchy phrases that companies use is like, again, it totally uneducates. I don't even know if that's a word, but it totally confuses the masses. Is like, nah, it's not a record label in your pocket. Like, it's really not.
Well, I was annoyed with just hearing how how bad some of these recordings are that are coming out, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's going to become a trend where people are recording and their vocals are all distorted and it's horrible, and they just put it on the platforms, and that's going to be the new frontier. And then I remembered back in 2002, 2003, I think it was, when Soulja Boy blew up, and he was really the first young person to use the internet to that degree. And his recordings, because he was a kid, he didn't know what he was doing, so his recordings sounded all distorted, and everyone loved it. So I guess I'm having this conversation in my head where I'm thinking, nah, people aren't going to go for the cell phone recordings, and then I think back to that era, and I think, yeah, they probably are, and there's not anything necessarily wrong with that. So
Yeah.
I'm telling myself that I'm wrong in advance before I go on a rant about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already seen it, right? I think there's a lot of music that's not quality recorded, that gets uploaded. Because I think it's more about, it's more about melody, it's more about story. Because you can always go, a lot of songs get released in a pretty rough version, and then, there's a bigger rollout, like once it catches organic virality, and then maybe a major gets involved, and then they like re-record the song and release it in a more finished version later. But yeah, man, this is just fresh. The music industry is frustrating, and I'm glad I have like only like 1 foot in and 1 foot out now. Um, because it's a lot of this stuff is just sick. And to go on with my United Masters slander, the other reason that United Masters probably shouldn't be used by independent artists is because of their first right of refusal in their contract. So that basically means that like if you put music on their platform, and I think it's for 6 months even after you take it off or something like that. Like if somebody gives you a deal and it's based off of music that was distributed through their platform, they have the first right of refusal, so they can offer you it match that deal or better. And all they are is a distribution service, so they shouldn't have. I don't know how often they pull that card on artists. Maybe it's not often, maybe it's never happened, but that also, if it's never happened, they should just take the shit out, because that's not normal. Especially for a platform that says it's all about the independent artist, then that's the type of restrictions that shouldn't exist in their contract.
Where do you see first rights of refusal generally? Do you see them in production deals? Do you see them in development deals?
Um, I don't. I've never. I mean, it's never really been something. I would imagine and I know production deals aren't really. Well, they shouldn't really be a thing anymore.
I don't think they. But
That
let me not say anything.
that's probably where you would see them. It makes the most sense. But but yeah, I don't see too many production deals anymore. And I don't think if anybody's offering you a production deal, I'm not saying never sign a production deal, but probably in very rare circumstances. It just adds so many people to the mix, and then you eventually, have a deal that's you're signed to like four different entities. Um,
Well, I got people in my DMs every day asking me to sign them, and I've never once even I've never signed an artist to any kind of deal myself in my life, and I don't want to because I make music. I'm not a business person. That's not what I enjoy doing. So it just kind of shows you how even in today's landscape where you can have the quote unquote record label in your pocket, even when you can spend $1.99 a month on BeatStars distribution and your music is on every platform, even in the era of people and their platitudes of major labels are just banks, you don't need a major deal, you go independent. There are still people who, without really exploring that much about the business, are just ready to sign a deal, and not only just sign a deal, but sign a deal with somebody who isn't even offering deals and has no business offering deals. I have no business offering a deal. I shouldn't ever sign anybody.
well, that just lets you know that like artists at the end of the day they just want help. Like they don't know what to do, and they think that signing to someone or some company, like they just want help. They don't know what to do. I think that's really what that's a sign of.
Yeah. What? But God, I mean, I just after decades and decades of these horror stories about whether or not these are representative of all deals or not, but all these horror stories from the NWA movie to the TLC movie to all these conversations about what happened to a lot of early artists in in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, especially artists of color, how badly they were treated by the labels or how poorly structured and unfair their deals were. Why in 2020 is that the go-to for someone who
Well, because
is
it's
just
not
starting it?
because it's not completely accurate. Like those are the horror stories. Of course, those are going to get a movie written about them and produced about them. But what about the positive stories? That's just not a good movie.
No,
So
I'm not saying that. I'm saying, given that that's out there, you would think people would be a little more paranoid than to
no, they
just.
want help. They're stuck. They don't know what to do. Like, but that's also, I mean, even these successful independent artists are still signing deals, right? The artist that United Masters holds up in the light as, like, I don't know what to what extent they played a role in his development, but NLE Choppa eventually signed a deal with Warner. Like, and he's one of the biggest artists, streaming wise. Um, like he all of these artists eventually still sign. There's a reason why they eventually either they put a big enough carrot in front of them, or some of these artists just don't know what to do. They get to a certain level and and to continue to progress, they just don't know what to do.
Sure.
And the label has the resources to help them, theoretically get to that next level. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and we always hear about the times that it doesn't. But the last thing I would also say about independent artists is, like, a lot of people, a lot of artists wave the independent flag, and I think it's something to, like, get your fans excited. Like, your fans are excited by you being independent. Like, your early fans are excited about that. And I know that a lot of artists struggle with, like, oh, should I get this relationship with this label? Because then my fans might not, they might look at me differently or tell me I've changed. Like, and every artist I've seen in that situation that went on to do that deal, like, and still made good music. Like, if your music changes, then your fans might leave. But if you go on and do the same thing, like, it's good to harness that energy early, but don't let that hold you back from a deal that you should sign. Because if you keep putting out good music, your fans aren't going anywhere. They might complain, but you're catering to, like, a very small percentage of your fans. Like, Russ's fans obviously only got a lot bigger once he had the platform at Columbia. I think it was Columbia.
Yeah,
Um,
Columbia.
yeah. So
Because I just got my royalty statement from the last Russ album.
flex on him then, Pain.
Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, I know that that is sometimes a struggle with some successful independent artists that struggle with, like, man, I don't want to sign because then my fans, I've been waving this independent flag. It's like, you have to do what's best in the next stage of your development. And if your music is still solid, your fans, a few of your fans might complain, oh man, you might have sold out, but drop that next banger, they'll be right back on board. Like,
Yeah, they will.
that's how it works. So, you have to manage your own career and just have good people around you and make smart decisions. That's really all life is about, really. Um, so
Well, one smart decision you can make is tuning into the live and free music business mentorship sessions that the Music Entrepreneur Club runs twice a week, powered by BeatStars, beatstars.world or beatstars.live. Beatstars.world is a little easier to navigate, and you can learn more about all of the various changes, options, new features in the BeatStars community. on that note, I think we'll end this, and we'll catch you on episode 62. Appreciate you watching, listening, tuning in. Peace.
Peace.